Rogers wasn't looking for a way to approximate the Western sound. He was looking for a way to make the lyric come emotionally alive.
When you start looking at how they wrote it, when you start looking at the choices they made, when you start looking at how the piece fits together, there is a wonderful complexity built into it.
John Mauceri set out to find the original music for the show. I mean, it's a very big passion of his, is going back to the source.
The fact that Rodgers and Hammerstein could, in fact, restore the original orchestrations. The actual sound of Oklahoma could be restored.
And so one of the things that we do as we restore this music is we, as much as we can, try to find out what was that original intent.
When Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein were joined together for the first time, they really were both parts of other teams.
Hammerstein had not had a hit in years and was considered washed up. And Rodgers, of course, had had a complete career with Lawrence Hart.
This was as innovative as anything because these were two guys who wrote very different kinds of musicals.
Oscar wrote the lyrics first, which is very significant because with Larry Hart, Rodgers wrote the music first.
So the songs themselves rise out of the emotion of the story. There's not a single character that turns to another character and says, "Please sing me a song."
You know, a European composer might have written, there's nothing wrong with that, but Rodgers found the note in between. It's clearly harmonized as a Western note, and I know even if you're not a musician, you can hear what I mean. There's nothing pretty, there's something very stark about that chord. And it's really the sound of the guitar. And that starkness in the harmony gives us that little bit of a feeling of the West without really going there.
The genius of Rodgers and Hammerstein was they buried the craft in the product.
When Rodgers' shows were orchestrated, and he worked a lot with Robert Russell Bennett when he was working with Oscar Hammerstein, Bennett would actually come into the theater and walk around snapping his fingers to hear what the acoustics in the house were. Then he would orchestrate the show for that theater. Then they'd go to the next city, Washington or Boston. They'd make other adjustments because in every theater the acoustics are different.
What will be put in front of the music stands in North Carolina will be the first time that a completely restored score of Oklahoma will be played and listened to and corrected.
The tough thing is that when these parts were copied very beautifully, everything else was thrown away. We have to go back and ask all the questions. We have to look at the way these parts were written and rewritten as the music was rehearsed.
We were going to learn some incredibly interesting things. For example, the oboe part in Oklahoma is what we call a doubling, which is that the same player plays more than one instrument. So the oboe part is an oboe and an oboe d'amore, which is a very specific kind of lower instrument, and a bass oboe, which is one of the most unusual instruments in the world. Most people have never even seen a bass oboe. It was an endangered species probably in 1943, and it is now totally off the planet. At least since I produced On Your Toes, we bought a bass oboe back in 1980, whatever year it was. And that bass oboe has stayed for the past 35 years under the bed of Adam Gettle, who was Richard Rodgers' grandson. So when I found out there was a bass oboe part in Oklahoma, I called up Adam and I said, "You're going to have to get the bass oboe out from under your bed." Now we've got the bass oboe back and we're teaching our kids to play the bass oboe. The way we hear music in the West is we hear a melody, but the bottom of it is the floor on which we stand. And when that floor moves, it is truly moving. It's like the floor moves. Rodgers was able to tap into what appears to be a simple melody and turn it into something of profound emotion. And whether that's a song like Out of My Dreams or even something as simple as Oh What a Beautiful Morning, the way it moves, literally moves you.
In retrospect, it's easy for us to look back on some of this and say, oh, he was doing this and he was doing that. I think the strength of the music ultimately is it was coming from this emotional place inside of him, and it goes beyond the rules.